All right, now that you set up your Google Classroom, let's take a look at it. First of all, this is where you land, your landing page when you show up to Google Classroom. I have several classrooms. I have my own classrooms. I guess a lot of them are my own classrooms. But I have my own classrooms, and I also have one that I've created to use as our test class so I can show you around. So first of all, if you look at the first screen, we have several things. We have the waffle here, which will let you navigate to any other Google Suite app. We have your join or create a class button here. So you can join a class if somebody is giving you a code, or you could create a class. Across the top, we have our menu bar here, menu bars. If I click on those, this is the view I'm in, classes. I can view the calendar view, which is a pretty cool thing to look at. I don't have anything assigned yet, but I'm going to go back a couple weeks and you can look into my classes. What happens here is it will show you the due dates. The cool thing when you create a Google Classroom, it also creates a calendar and shares that calendar with everybody in your class. So you can see all your assignments when they're due on a Google Classroom calendar. On your calendar, it's going to create several different calendars. I just turn those off when I get to your calendar. If you don't want to see a bunch of different class events of yours, just turn your calendars off. I usually just leave one of my repeated classes open. Also, back in the menu bar, we have a to-do list. I don't ever look at that, but I'll show it to you. It really just, I guess, is telling you what's due and what needs to be graded and so forth and everything, but I never use it, but it's probably useful. If you want to use it, go ahead and do it. Back to the menu. The rest of the things are the list of my classes. These are all my classes. These are the ones that I am enrolled in, so I'm a student of a couple classes. And then archived classes. So if I want to check out what I did last year, I can, or the first semester, sometimes people will archive their classes each semester. I usually do it at the end of the year. You can click on that and you can go back through all of those archived classes. And finally, settings. And I want to go over a couple of the settings really quickly. So this one I like to turn off, the receive email notifications, because if you have multiple classes with lots of students in them, you're going to get lots of email notifications. So I generally turn that off. You can tailor it to however you want to do it, but I generally turn that off. You can also come down here and you can see you can tailor these to however you want. So you can have some notifications, some on, some off. I just close it because I'm gonna be going through here and I'm gonna check pretty regularly my students' work. So I just don't want all the emails that are come through. So I turn that off. I would recommend doing it, but to each their own. If you like getting all the emails, you're more than welcome to do that. Let's go back to the home. And I'm going to use this test class to show you some things. I'm going to show you a couple more things, and that's going to be it for this video. So this is what your class looks like here, right? This is your opening screen that you fall on. This is the stream. I'm not super happy with the stream because that's all it is. It's really a stream of things that are happening. Every time you put an assignment, which I'm going to go over in the next video on classwork, it will add it to the stream, and the stream just runs one thing after the other. So it becomes very long and bogged down. Again, if you like that, that's totally fine. If you're like me and I wish the stream went away, what I do is I come to settings and I scroll down. And again, in these settings, I can change the class name and description and section, so on and so forth. I've got my class code, but what I do is I click on, sorry. What I do is I click here and I hide notifications on the stream. That means nothing will show up on the stream, except for anything that I choose to put on there, anything that I post on there. It won't post all my classwork. It won't post all sorts of other things. So I choose to hide that. I also tend to hide or make this only teachers can post a comment, which is pretty good. because kids will jump on here and they can comment at will, which is cool, but I generally don't keep that open. But for our distance learning time period, I probably will keep it open because it's a good way to communicate back and forth. And there's some videos on the website, actually on the curriculum website, that'll show you what to do if students are making inappropriate comments or just commenting too much. My own son's teacher sent him something to comment on, and he was a kid. They weren't inappropriate. It was just, dude, 20 comments is way too much. So you can make those adjustments as you wish. I generally keep this turned off during the regular school year, during this distance learning year. I'm probably going to leave it on just for some cool outside of class conversations, or so kids can ask each other questions, things like that. But if it doesn't go the way it's supposed to, I'll come in here and turn it off. You can grade in Google Classroom and set grading categories. This would just be like you do in any grade book. I can have an overall grade. The kids will see their grades in here if you want. You can do weighted grades. I do add all those categories in my regular Google Classrooms. However, I don't really stick to the Google Classroom gradebook. That's just my personal preference because it doesn't always grade things the way that I want it to be graded. So I stick to Aries for all of my grades, even though I might grade an assignment on Google Classroom. I know that sounds confusing, but the grading on Google Classroom is more for a quick check or feedback for students, and then I put the actual grade that I want to use in the grade book in the Aries grade book. But you can adjust all of this, and you can use Google Classroom as your grade book as well. Click Save. A couple more things we're going to look at. We're going to look across the top at each different page on here. So classwork is where you make your assignments. And again, I am going to go over that in the next video. You have a link here to the Google Calendar that this created for this class. You have the class drive folder. I really seldomly ever look in that drive folder, but what happens when you create Google Classroom is it creates a folder for each classroom where all of the documents that you're creating through Google Classroom live. But I don't really ever go into it because you don't have to, because everything that you need to access is right here on your Google Classroom. The next is people. So the cool thing about people that you can do here is, I am the only teacher right now, but if I wanted to add a teacher, so if I wanted to add, oops, let me spell it right, a SPED teacher, I could invite her and I could add her to the class. I could then remove her if I don't want. I could send her an email, but it's a pretty good feature if you want to add your SPED teachers to your classroom. That way it gives them access to all your student work. You don't have to remember to share it with that teacher. You don't have to remember to send them the due dates and all those things. They can see it right away. They'll get notifications, or unless they turn them off. But that's a really good feature of adding your teachers. Some principals like to be added to one class so they can take a peek in and see what it looks like, because they generally don't have classrooms. So at least my principal likes to look at what we have going on in Google Classroom. These are all the students that signed up for my class. If you used Aries to set up your Google Classroom, this was auto-populated for you. One thing that's cool is you can invite, if you notice it says invite guardians. Now, inviting guardians is pretty easy, but it's a little labor intensive. You need your student's parents' email. You can collect that through a form if you like. That part's pretty easy, but then you have to go through each one and write that email in each one at a time. Again, not that big of a deal, but especially right now, it might be nice to give those parents, they don't have access to the classroom, but they'll get notifications about assignments on a weekly basis. It's pretty easy to invite somebody. Oh, I was going to invite somebody here. Let me invite a guardian to Kelly Logue. You type in the email address and I hit invite. It doesn't have to be a Google email address. It can be any email address. And then I am eventually going to get an email that asks me if I want to be accepted. I can email guardians, remove them. I can have more than one guardian. So if you have separate households, you can invite as many guardians as you like. The cool thing, once I invite a guardian to my classroom, so I teach 7th grade social studies at Mesa Middle School. Once I add that guardian into my into my Google Classroom, that guardian will be added to all of the rest of that student's classes. So if I invite them in social studies and they accept, they'll be added to the math, language arts, PE, electives, any other Google Classroom that's set up. So even though one person's doing the work, it helps out everybody else. All right, some actions you can do in here is when I select students, I can do several things. I can email them from here, I can remove them from class, or I can mute them. On the district website, there is a quick version of this, but let me show you really quickly how you can mute. You just hit mute, give you some options. This is for that kid that's maybe like my own kid that's doing too many messages and I would just want to mute them for a second. I can still contact them. They just can't post anything that the rest of the class can see, and they can still contact me. So even though Cameron is muted, he can contact me privately. I can contact him. So if I mute him, I'm going to click him again. I'm going to send him an email, and it's going to say, hey, dude, little much on the comments. Let's try to keep them to a minimum and appropriate. I will unmute you as long as you pinky swear that you're not going to do that again. And you send them the email, and hopefully they say sure. And then to unmute, just as easy, you hit unmute, unmute, and Cameron's back in. The other cool thing about this is I can select all my students. So in our district, if you don't have everybody's student ID memorized, well, here's a way you can email every single student in your classroom very easily. You select everybody, not mute, and then you hit email. It takes you to Gmail, puts all their email addresses in, and you send off your email. Super easy. Finally, the grading tab. Again, it gives you a grade book to use. I don't really ever look at it, even though the grades are going to show up here. I don't go by anything with the grade book. I tell my students, don't look at this grade book. Don't worry about the grade book here. Worry about the Aries grade book, and that's it. So that's your quick walk through Google Classroom. Just an overview of what you got. In the next one, I'm going to go over classwork and assignments one at a time. That's it.